Hello everyone! How you guys doing today? My name is Cody Ziering, one of the managing partners here at CannaBIZ Collects. And we wanted to do a little webinar, just answer some questions, go over some of the basics, and teach a few little inside tricks that we know that, should be common knowledge. Very excited to do this. This is the first one of the year, a little late in the year, but better late than never. Again, I'd like you guys to please ask any questions as they come up. Please add them in chat. So if you see me look over here this way, that's what I'm checking. I will get to them at the end. But until then, let's get started, everybody. So today's webinar is known as Extending Credit and Securing Your AR in 2020. A lot of crazy things that go on in this industry, a lot of handshake deals. And we have some tools, tips, and strategies that make it a little bit safer so you can help grow your business while not necessarily taking all the risk that sometimes it requires. Let's get started. So, the very, very first thing that you ever want to do when you're about to extend credit to one of your clients is to set proper expectations. And this starts at the very beginning of the sales process. So you want to make sure that your sales team is trained up and that you have an established SOP, orders and procedures. Make sure that everything is done to the book every single time. If your sales team is trained to do so, shouldn't have too many issues. You make sure that you establish that at the very beginning of the relationship. Moreover, you also want to plan out your consequences ahead of time. What that means, if you do extend credit and someone ends up not paying and you get into an outdated AR problem or situation, make sure that your client is aware that there will or can be some penalties. One of the simplest, easiest things to do is to include an interest clause. So anytime that they're late, you're able to tack on a little bit of interest, make sure that it's just worth it for you. Number two, a lot of these times, these clients are making repeat orders and consistently rely on your sales to them in order for them to sell product. This happens a lot in situations where a wholesaler who grows cannabis is selling to a dispensary. Oftentimes that dispensary is going to need product ahead of time. So you sell them 10 pounds of flour 1 week, they sell through it, they're going to need more. So as another option, if someone has an outstanding balance beyond the terms that you've set or makes you feel comfortable, you can refuse to continue to sell them product. While that's not necessarily the best solution because you're going to lose sales and potentially a relationship, it is an option as a way to help you move forward or, impose some consequences. And then number three, of course, while we exist, collections. And you can establish that in the agreement saying, hey, if you guys are late more than 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, we're going to send you to collections. Doesn't necessarily have to be CannaBIZ Collects, but some type of collection agency where it's no longer in your control, you've sent it away to someone else to then go after it, and now it's out of your hands. And then number three, you always want to establish hard timelines. So whenever you're, like we talked about, stopping future sales or when to charge interest, when to send to collections. And this should all be part of the SOP and also laid out in any type of credit contract that you establish with any of your clients. Make sure that it's just very clear. There's hard time, hard deadlines. Everything is very explicit. The more and clearer your expectations and your setting of your expectations with your clients, the less surprises and the less upset that they can get with you. Now, when you do want to extend credit, there's definitely some prep work involved, and you want to make sure that you're doing all of your homework. You want to make sure that if you're going to extend credit, that business is able to pay you back, make sure that they have a good cash flow, a good customer base, make sure that they're turning over product quickly enough that they actually can pay you back. And what that means oftentimes is that you'd want to do a credit check on the business or the owners. In cannabis, a lot of the times these businesses don't have accurate or reliable credit scores. So a lot of the times you'd have to just go and directly credit check the owner, which isn't such a bad thing. Some people don't necessarily want that to happen, but again, you're selling to them on your terms, not on theirs. So if they're uncomfortable with it, that may cause a red flag and may make you want to sell them to cash up front only and not extend credit. Which brings me to my next point. If something spooks you or it seems too good to be true, don't offer terms. A lot of it seems like it's pretty obvious, but a lot of people will feel sketchy about something and still push through anyway because their eye is on the sale and not necessarily on what can happen. So if something spooks you, doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, think twice before doing anything. Another good thing that you can see if they're asking to be extended credit or terms is to see their sales data, like we mentioned. What have they been doing for the past 3 months? Have they been moving product or are they struggling to move product? Why do they necessarily need that credit? Be certain that they're going to have the cash to pay you. It's essential that they're moving products to be able to facilitate their business, but that doesn't mean that you have to play the bank and stake them terms. Make sure that everything that you're doing checks all the boxes, makes you feel comfortable, makes them feel comfortable, and that way, you have a better chance, if anything is to go wrong, that it doesn't. Next, if you ever are going to extend credit terms, it's amazing how frequently we see this. You always have to exchange a contract. Make sure that it's signed by both parties. In the cannabis industry, a lot of times, believe it or not, people just do handshake deals. And yes, cannabis is very much a relationship business, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do everything on a handshake. Everything should always be in writing. Everything should always be very explicit. Shouldn't be any secrets or any surprises, and a contract explicitly helps with that. It's a piece of writing that lists out all of your expectations, all of their expectations, and it's an agreement that you guys are both agreeing to, so that way there isn't any confusion down the line if there is a problem. Next, when your client buys from you, they should be offering or providing you a purchase order. Basically, it's a standard document from every business where they're saying, we'd like to purchase this. When they send you a purchase order, you then should be sending them an invoice that they then sign and return back to you. That way there's a clear and confirmed paper trail of the sale. If anything is to go wrong and you have all of these things, it's very clear to the collection agency, the courts, whoever needs to see this, that there is an established paper trail, there's an established purchase and sale agreement. Let's move on to the next one. Necessary clauses. Now this is a big one too. This is some of the tips and tricks that we at CannaBIZ Collects can help you improve on. When you're extending credit and you have them sign contracts, there's a couple key pieces in those contracts that you want to make sure that are included in the contract. Number one, and that's an interest clause. Now, there is a max acceptable amount of interest that you can charge. It's 18% a year or 1.5% per month. And this is not necessarily something that you actually have to collect on should anyone become delinquent, but it is an extra piece of ammo to give you to say, hey, I'm not going to charge you this if you pay me on time or pay me in the next week. Just a very good tip to have and, as extra ammo or an extra card in your back pocket. Number two, make sure that there's a clause in there that requires any delinquent client to pay your attorney or your collection fees. Collection agencies like us don't exist just to do it for free. Obviously, we charge for our time and for our efforts. Everything we do is on a contingent basis, but when we are successful, which happens rather frequently, we do charge fees. So there's no reason that you should have to pay those fees if you have to make a collection or send a client to collections. So if you have a clause in there that requires any delinquent payments or collections to be paid by them, it's another thing that protects you when going after any past due AR. Number three, you want to ask to get a personal guarantee from the owner. And this ties in line with perhaps doing a credit check or a background check on them. If you have a personal guarantee from the owner and someone goes delinquent or the business stops responding to you, we like to call it ghosting. If the client ghosts you and doesn't take any of your calls, but you have a personal guarantee from the owner, you can then sue or go after that owner specifically and individually, not necessarily just his business, but the owner themselves. So you can try and take any assets that they have to recover any debts that they may owe you, their car, their house. And obviously this isn't something that you'd want to have to do, but having it in your back pocket always is helpful and always makes a resolution come a little bit easier. Number four, always have established preset timelines. Tell them at 30 days, You get a warning at 60 days, you're going to collections. No ifs, ands, or buts, and that also means that you have to stick to it. So if someone goes beyond 30 days, they get a written warning, they have to continue on and pay you, or they know what's going to happen next. And making sure that those preset timelines are very clear and signed off on is crucial. Another good tip to have is a little initial box during that part of the contract. So as they're going through, if they initial it specifically, you know that they have read that. And then number 3 is default judgment clauses. A default judgment essentially is something that if they don't make a payment by a certain time, it automatically becomes a default judgment, which means that you can take it to the courts, and the courts then order them to pay you. No ifs, ands, or buts, no trial or court session needed. It just happens. Very, very important. Now, once you have all these things established, or you're trying to figure out how to write them, you definitely want to get a professional in there to make sure that all of your T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and everything in there is as it should be. CannaBIZ Collects offers these services. So if anyone is interested in extending credit but wants to bolster their policies a little bit, please feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help. Let's keep moving on. Timelines. Let's talk about what's pretty common practices in the industry. So week 1, week 2, very early, they're supposed to pay on a Monday. It ends up getting to a Friday. You still haven't seen anything. That's fine. It happens. Sometimes people get super busy, especially in the cannabis industry. They forget to pay a bill. It happens. In this case, a lot of people have their sales rep very, very gently remind their clients that there's a past due bill. Shouldn't really be any concern or anything like that in this early time. Now, once it gets to like 14, 21 days, give or take, it might be time to have someone outside of your sales rep start stepping in to try and help collect that money. The sales rep is supposed to have a positive relationship with their client. They're the ones selling, and they're the ones pushing your business forward. So in this circumstance, when you need to get a little bit more firm, take it off the sales rep's shoulders and put it onto someone else, like an AR manager or a bookkeeper or just a general manager of the company, to reach out and talk about the delinquent account, try and figure out what's going on, why they can't pay. Be open and honest with your clients, and they'll be open and honest with you most of the time. Now, if we go a little bit later on, 45 days, 6 weeks, a little longer, it might be time to consider sending your claim to collections. If the client stops responding to you, if they stop answering your calls, your texts, your emails, it may be time to get a third party involved who they will take their call on. They don't necessarily recognize the number, and they have to talk to them, and they know that there could be consequences if they ignore it. Now, most importantly, the longer you wait to send to collections, the more difficult the claim becomes to collect. We have a great blog on our website that shows the percentage chance of collections based on time. It's a very linear line. At the very early stages, you have a very high chance of collecting it. The longer on you go, the worse off your chances are. So it's always a little bit of a tightrope act, making sure that you know when to reach out. And it depends on your business. Sometimes people like to do it earlier in the 45-day range. Sometimes people wait until about the 90-day range. But again, the sooner you submit it to collections, the higher the percentage chance that you have. Let's keep moving on. Now, you may ask, okay, we talked a lot about collections. What the heck do you guys do? Quite a few things, honestly. So when you submit, let's even before we get into what to expect to collections, let's talk a little bit about how you submit a claim to us. So you realize that there's some issues. You have some outstanding debt. Maybe it's like 30 days old. You need to understand what's going on. So you keep reaching out to the company and they don't answer. Now it's 45 days, 50 days, 60 days, whatever. It's time to reach out to a collection agency. What CannaBIZ Collects expects is number one, obviously, and we call it a retainer agreement, but because we don't charge any retainer fees, it's really just initial agreement or a fee agreement. It's an agreement that we ask that has you authorize the fees. So if we are successful, you're agreeing to whatever our contingency percentage rate is. And it also allows us to act as an agent on your behalf to contact the debtor and try and collect the debt. Once we have that, we have a very simple submission form on our site. And basically, we just need your contact information, their contact information, as well as any evidence of the debt. For those states that use metric transfers are amazing. Like we discussed before, purchase orders and invoices, really any documentation that you have that proves that there was a sale made and some type of agreement made and then nothing back is very, very helpful. So now that you've submitted it, let's talk about what we do. So our agency then goes and conducts research on the business. So we'll go out and understand their locations, who their owners are, if there's any assets on the books that we can see, any type of cash accounts. A lot of this is called skip tracing. It requires some specialized software. And we go out and we understand what the business is like, what their assets are, who they are, etc. From there, we then start to make contact. We do that via phone, email, or snail mail. And we professionally warn your delinquent client of the past due account. And we tell them that they need to make payment. We continuously call them, talk to them, and say, hey, what's going on? When can we expect you to pay our client? Oftentimes we reach out 10, 15, 20, 30 different times in order to actually make a collection. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on to get you paid back. Now, in terms of timeline, once you submit a claim to us, depending on the evidence that you have, the responsiveness of your debtor, collections can take anywhere from a week to several months. Funny enough, one of our partners, Ross Gelfand, the man that manages much of the collections, has been a collection attorney for 35 years, almost 40 now. Came from the standard collection agency world, had a big firm and sold it and retired, but realized that there was a need, so we ended up making CannaBIZ Collects. Because of Ross and how talented he is and how long he's been doing this, he turns claims in very quickly. There was one time where we had a claim submitted around 10:30 in the morning, and by 2 o'clock it was collected. Now, I don't want to say that that's any common thing, but it does happen. We move very quickly. So, like I said, collections can take anywhere from a week to several months, very dependent on the type of arrangement and the debtor. Now, let's also talk about how we get payment for you guys. So we're there to get the settlement that you want. Whenever possible, we always prefer to get a lump sum in place, although occasionally payment plans do help as well. And oftentimes when there is a payment plan set up, default judgments are built into those payment plan contracts. So let's say someone owes you $10,000 and we set up a payment plan where they're going to pay you $1,000 a month for the next 10 months. But if they make any payments delinquently or don't make them, miss a payment, it automatically becomes a default judgment and they owe you whatever the balance is. Automatically, we can take them to court and show the court the documents, and the court then says you need to pay this. Very, very, very helpful. And that's why we try and avoid it, but it does happen frequently, and it is a good way for your debtors who are having cash flow issues to still be able to pay you back without hurting their business really at all. Now, a lot of collection agencies, and this is one of the major differences between CannaBIZ Collects and some of the other guys, is that a collection agency, a standard collection agency, just wants to collect whatever money they can, screw their own client, doesn't matter. To us, we want to make sure that you get the settlement that you're looking for. So say you're owed $10,000 and we reach out to your client, your debtor, and they say, well, I can't afford $10,000, I can afford $6,000. Would a $6,000 lump sum, give it to them, give it to CannaBIZ's client, the lender, and we'll call it even. Now, we'll take that back and say, hey, we just got an offer for a $6,000 lump sum. Do you want to take it? A lot of collection agencies wouldn't even ask that. They'd say, okay, no problem. Great. Sorry, lender. You're only getting 6 out of this. But hey, we got 6 out of it. So be happy. Say thank you. Let's move on. If that's something that you're not interested in, and we come back and we say, hey, we want they're offering $6,000, and we don't think it's a good deal, we'll tell you, hey, I don't think you should take this. If you don't want to take this and you say, hey, this is not a good deal, we don't like this, that's the last that you're going to hear of it. We don't like to push or force offers upon anyone, But we will let you know if it's a good offer, if it's not a good offer, and we are very upfront and clear about what we think is right and what we think that you should do. Though no matter what, at the end of the day, it comes down to you, not down to us. It's your decision, not ours. We're here to make you guys happy, make sure that you guys are getting whatever you need out of it. Let's keep moving on. Now, just some brief takeaways. Always, always, always set proper expectations. Do your prep work. Make sure that you're doing background checks, credit checks, whatever type of information that you can get. Ask to see their books, perhaps. Make sure that you have a well-organized and flow of contracts and paperwork. Make sure that it's saved somewhere like a Google Drive, where you're printing everything and keeping it in a file cabinet. But always make sure that you have copies and backup copies of your paperwork. Make sure that you've had your contracts reviewed, all of the necessary clauses that are in there or need to be in there are in there and written properly and correctly so that they're enforceable. Make sure that you're always sticking to your timelines. If you say you're going to send them to collections in 60 days, don't wait until day 70 to do it. Make sure that you send them on day 60. And then lastly, submit to collections when you need to. Now, kind of went through this, but again, what you can expect from CBC. We're here to allow you guys to keep focused on selling. We don't want your salespeople to go after and sour any relationships or put undue pressure on their clients. Let them step back, stay out of it, and be like, I don't really know what's going on. I know you guys owe some money, but it's out of my hands. It's with the AR manager. It's with the collection agency now. We also always offer very fair contingency rates. Considering how tremendous and high quality our work is, you won't find many agencies that charge the same rates that we do. Oftentimes, they are a lot higher. You can always expect professional communication from us to you and to your debtor. We never are overly or unnecessarily aggressive, and we're never unprofessional. We understand this is a business transaction. There's nothing personal here. Business is business. And then lastly, we move quickly. We move as quickly as we can. So we will always bring you the speediest resolution and recovery as possible. If anyone has any questions, now would be a great time to ask. Please put them down in chat. I'm going to take a quick break. Throat's getting a little dry. We'll be back in 2 minutes to answer any questions. Okay, everybody, we are back. This has been a nice, quick, brief little overview of collections in the cannabis industry. This is available if you're coming on late. There will be a replay up on our channel momentarily. It takes a little bit for the encoders to capture everything and then repost it. We'll also make sure that this goes out in next week's email blast. But I wanted to thank everyone that came to this. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for paying attention. I wish I could answer some questions, though there hasn't been any asked. It's been an absolute pleasure. There's a reason that we have 400 plus clients in the industry, and that's because we do really good work. We're very highly recommended, and we earn every penny that we get. Thank you again, guys. My name is Cody Ziering, one of the managing partners here, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care.